We're doing something today called completing the square. Okay, actually let me, let's see. Let's back up for a second. I think this was Wednesday's assignment. You guys remember how we did this? Or sometime last week. You guys remember how we did this last week?
Did you add just basic?
No, you don't add 40.
Oh, wait.
Okay, now,
Yeah,
if this was the problem, you could just add, this is what we did on Thursday, the one we just turned in. So, if you just have like x squared minus 40, you just get x squared by itself, and then you square root it, remember that? And then that's like 4 times 10, so it's like 2 squared of 5. But remember also we had to put plus minus in all those. Because negative whatever squared also comes out as positive whatever. Okay, that was Thursday, but this was Wednesday, I think. Nobody remembers?
Nope.
Okay, so you can't just get x squared by itself. Why? Because there's a plus 3x right there. So what we had to do was factor. Remember doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, what multiplies into negative 40 that adds up to 3? 5 and 8. So how do you get 3 out of that? 8 minus 5. And then remember this, what x values would make this factor or this factor equal 0? Like what x value? Positive 5, negative 8. And you can check that by plugging it back here, like 5 squared minus 3 times 5, 10, or sorry, plus 3 times 5 is 40, minus 40 is 0. Okay, anyways, that's all that. But what do we do? What was that one? I'm not going to use it. Maybe we get something like this. Okay, the problem is this does not factor. What goes into 10 is 5 times 2. How does that add up to 4? It doesn't. So this is not factorable. That doesn't mean it doesn't have a solution. It just means the answers are messy. Okay, and the way we're going to solve this today, it's called completing the square. I'll explain why it's called that in a little while. Completing the square. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Actually, tomorrow we're going to solve it a different way because they kind of simplified it. But occasionally completing the square does have some uses in math, so I figured it's worth one day. Okay, so in this case, when it doesn't factor, when you're completing the square, you actually want this number to go to the other side. So just kind of get rid of it for a second. And then I'm just leaving a blank right here. All right, here's the magic steps. Everybody listening? Brian? Josiah? Okay. You take the number in front of the x, which is a 4. You divide it by 2, and then you square it. Okay, what's 4 divided by 2? 2. Squared? 4. Okay. So what we're going to do is add 4 over here. And if you add it to one side, guess what? To keep it equal, you have to add it to the other side. Okay, why would we do that? Well, because right now, this thing factors perfectly. Not only does it factor, it's what you would call a perfect square. What multiplies into 4 that would add up to 4?
2 and 2.
2 and 2. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4. So not only does it factors perfectly. It's x plus 2 squared. And then on the right side we just have 10 plus 4, which is 14. Okay, now I know you probably forgot, we did a couple of these on Thursday. What can I do at this point? Well, since the whole left side is squared, how can I get rid of a square?
Square root.
Square root. However, when you use the square root trick, okay, so the square goes away, but this could be actually be positive or negative, so we have to remember to put a little plus or minus there. And then to solve for x, how do I get rid of plus 2?
Subtract 2 from both sides.
Okay, does minus 2 mix with that?
It does not.
No, it doesn't. You could change it to a weird decimal, but it's just a big mess, as it does, like an infinite decimal. So that's as good as we can get it. This represents two numbers. It's negative 2 plus square root of 14 and negative 2 minus square root of 14. It's two different answers. Let's say it had come out perfectly as like negative 2 plus 14 or negative 2 minus 14. If that is the case, you can keep going and solve it. Like the answers would be 12 and negative 16. Okay, but if it's a square root, you can't really simplify that. If it's a normal number, go ahead and solve it.
So why again would you put the 4 over 2?
Okay, this, you always take the number in front of the x, divide it by 2, and then whatever that is, square it. Okay, the reason we do that is because it creates something that factors perfectly into two identical things. It's like it's called a perfect square. It's x plus 2 times x plus 2, or x plus 2 squared. Okay, it's a little bit tricky. If you do it a few times, it's kind of easy actually, but getting it in your head the first time. Okay, so on number 1, we're not doing all of that. We're just doing, we're kind of just filling in the blank here. Like if this was our left side of our equation, what number would go right here? That's all we're figuring out. So this is what the book wrote down, x squared plus 8x. And basically this is what we're figuring out. What would go right there? Okay, so what did I say we're going to do to this number?
16.
Divide by 2
square.
and square it. Divide by 2 and square it. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Okay, this is what the book wrote, that, and this is what we're going to fill in right here. Okay, so it's going to be 16 divided by 2 squared. 16 divided by 2 is 8 squared is 64. Number 5. Okay, this time it's a negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So it actually doesn't matter if that's negative or not, it's always going to come out positive, because when you square a negative, it's still positive. That's 5. X squared plus 3. Uh-oh, we're in trouble now. Alright, so we're going to do the 3 divided by 2. Well, what's 3 divided by 2?
Like 1.33.
Well, it's like 1.5, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to leave it as 3 halves. Yeah, we're going to leave it as 3 over 2.
It's 9/8.
Right. When you square a fraction, it's 3 over 2 times 3 over 2. Basically, it's just 3 squared over 2 squared. So 3 times 3 is 9, 2 times 2 is 4. So it's 9/4. As a decimal, that'd be like 2.25. It's just messier as decimals, so we just leave it as fraction. Number 9, x squared minus 11x. Okay, kind of the same deal on this one. It's negative 11 divided by 2. Now the negative doesn't really matter for this part because when you square a negative, it will become positive. So basically it's 11 squared over 2 squared. You guys remember 11 times 11? 121, and 2 squared is 4. Okay, getting messier and messier. All right, how would you do 3/2 divided by 2?
It's 3 usually.
No, it's not. Dividing by 2, or like dividing by 2 over 1, is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. You guys remember that from middle school? Dividing a fraction is like flipping it and multiplying it. So 3/2 divided by 2, you could plug that in your calculator somehow. But it's the same thing as like multiplying the denominator by 2, basically. That's what dividing by 2 does. So it's just, this is just 3/4. And 3/4 squared. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 4 is 16. X squared minus, this just gets uglier and uglier, doesn't it? Well, we're almost through this section. Alright, so do you guys remember what I said dividing by 2 does? It basically just multiplies the denominator by 2. So 10/11 divided by 2 is going to be 10 over 22, which would reduce, if you divide those by 2, to 5/11. But we still have to square that. Yeah, anyway, you can think of it as divide by 2 or times 1/2. So we could have done like 10/11 times 1/2, and we could have reduced that, like so, and got 5/11. Okay, 5/11 squared, 5 times 5, 25, and 11 times 11 is 121. Alright, next section. 15, solve by completing the square. Alright. So, you do need to show your work on these, and you do, I wouldn't copy it down exactly like the book did it. It's a little bit easier if you leave a blank space between the 2a and the equals. All right. By the way, this one actually does factor. If it comes out nice, like this one is, that means it could have factored. But this is kind of a warm-up for the weirder answers. Actually, all these are kind of nice, unless we went farther.
Is there any like not real answers on this?
No, they're all real. All right, so we're going to start with what we did on 1 through 14. We're going to take the number in front of the a term, divide it by 2, and square it. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared 1 times 1 is 1. But if you add 1 to the left side to keep it equal, you have to add 1 to the right side. Okay, why did we do that? Because the left side is now a perfect square. It's going to factor perfectly. So what multiplies into 1 that adds up to 2? 1 and 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, so it's just twin a plus 1, a plus 1s. It's going to be a twin like that every time. That's kind of why we're setting it up like we are. So it's always going to be like a plus 1 squared, a plus 3 squared, something times itself. And in this case, the right side is 15 plus 1, so it's 16. All right. Do you guys remember on my example or from Thursday what okay, not square. To get rid of a square, you can square root. Square root. So the left side is now just a plus 1, which is good. What's the right side though? 4.
Then you subtract one. Take an A.
Plus or minus 4, yeah. Don't forget that part. It's because if we went backwards, like instead of square rooting, we squared both sides, the negative 4 would turn into a 16. Anyway, just don't forget to put a plus or minus right there. You don't have to do plus or minus on both sides because if one side has it, that kind of works for both sides. Just trust me on that. All right, so to solve for a, I'm going to subtract 1. Okay, because we don't have a square root, that means we need to actually solve this. Which means I need to do 4 minus 1 and negative 4 minus 1. So you guys see where I'm getting that from? So 4 minus 1 is 3, and negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. And if you wanted to, you can plug that back into the original equation, see if those work. As always, on equations. 17. X squared plus 4x equals 5. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of empty space right there. All right, I'm going to take this number, the 4, divided by 2, and square it. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. All right. What is the left side going to factor to? What multiplies into 4 that adds up to 4? 2 times 2, or 2 plus 2. So it's positive 2, or I'm just going to go ahead and skip ahead and say it's x plus 2 squared equals 9. By the way, this number right here, the plus 2, will always be what was in the parentheses before you squared it. But it's also what multiplies into that adds up to that. So it's 2 times 2, or 2 plus 2, so it's x plus 2, x plus 2. All right, and to get rid of the square, square root, x plus 2 equals
Plus minus 3.
There we go. Plus minus 3. So this time I have to do 3 minus 2 and negative 3 minus 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. Negative 3 minus 2, like left 3, left 2 is negative 5. X squared minus 10x minus 20. All right, what's different about this section? Well,
24 is not on the right side.
yeah, they put the minus 24 on the left side, which if we were factoring, this actually would factor. We would want it to be like this. If we were factoring it, this is the place you want to start from. But if we're completing the square, we actually want this cleared out. We want this over here. Okay, now what are we going to do? This number, negative 10 divided by 2 squared. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared. Negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. All right, the left side. What multiplies into negative 10, or sorry, what multiplies into 25, that adds up to negative 10.
Negative 5, negative 5.
Negative 5, negative 5. It's always this value right here also. But yeah, it's x minus 5, x minus 5, or x minus 5 squared. And this side is 49. So I'm going to square root to get rid of the square. So I get x minus 5 equals plus or minus 7. So this means 7 plus 5 and negative 7 plus 5. 7 plus 5 is 12, and negative 7 plus 5, so you lose $7, you gain 5. Negative 2. All right, uno más. X squared minus 2x minus 99. Do you guys know, like if we were factoring this, what multiplies into 99, negative 99, that would add up to negative 2? You guys think of it? What goes into 99?
1.
9 and 11. And would that add up to negative 2? Yeah. So this actually does, these all do factor. If they come out, if the answers come out normal, like they will, they do factor. I don't want you to factor though, you do need to practice this. Completing the square works not just on factorable problems though, it also works on messy problems. Okay, so I'm going to take the -2. Oh, whoops, forgot what I was doing here. I need to get rid of that guy. I'm going to push him over to the right. I'm going to add 99 on both sides. If you wanted to, you could just start your problem like right here. Just do the plus 99 in your head. Alright, so I'm going to take the -2, divide it by 2, and then square it. So -1 squared is 1. What multiplies into 1 that adds up to -2? Yeah, that guy, -1. -1 times -1 is 1. -1 plus -1 is -2. Oh yeah, it's x minus 1. And 99 plus 1, 100. Get rid of the square. Square root. X minus 1 equals plus or minus 10. 10. You guys say 10 or 10? 10. Okay. Here's how I say it. 10. Here's how you're supposed to say it. 10. And here's how Case says it. Tan. Or maybe, is it more like this? Tan?
No, it's more like T-I-E-E-N.
Tan. All right, so 10 plus 1, -10 plus 1.
What else did you play anything else? How come you spelled 10 like that?
Because we were saying that it was
I
okay.
missed the conversation.
Yeah, you missed it. You weren't listening.
I was talking